Namaste, and welcome to this short series of reading of my own works, reading of my own stories. Um, and I'll be reading a few short articles that I published as part of my compilation of short stories and articles, spiritual articles, called Bat-tesha the Blind, a few years ago. And the first article that I'd like to read for you or share with you is called Spiritual Anarchy. Now, in his mystical handbook by the name of The Life of the World to Come, the medieval practical Kabbalist Abraham Abulafia, who lived from 1240 to around 1291, poses the question what a human has to do to live. Now, the unexpected answer is human has to die. Now, curious as this exchange may seem when taken at face value, one is instantly exposed to a thoroughly mystical understanding of life when the words to the fullest and psychologically are inserted in these sentences. The question then reads, what does a human have to do to live life to the fullest? And the answer now is, they have to die psychologically. Now, the first insight we can gain from these statements is that there are apparently more kinds of death than only the physical one. The second is that to improve the quality of one's life, one does not necessarily have to seek additions. On the contrary, by letting a specific part of one's psychological being go, or die, as Abulafia phrases it, one apparently gains something else in the process. Now, the new questions that now arise are, what is this full life that is attained? And how does the shedding of something in our psychological makeup lead to that fulfillment? Now, since these questions are interdependent, a proper understanding of the one leads to the clarification of the other. Abulafia was a Kabbalist and hence came from a Jewish background. From this, one might assume that his thoughts and emotions were thoroughly influenced by Judaism and might not apply or appeal to someone from a different tradition. The fact, however, is that although Abulafia used the Hebrew text as his starting point, he did so in a characteristically negational way. That is, while holding on to the Kabbalistic idea that the letters of the Hebrew alphabet have creational and mystical powers, Abulafia only did so because he had experienced this for himself. Surprisingly and fascinatingly, Abulafia believed that only by stripping the words of the Hebrew Bible of their meaning could one come face to face with the truth and essence of that holy book. In The Life of the World to Come, Abulafia describes many mystical techniques that involve the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. By concentrating only on letters and thus avoiding entire words, Abulafia strived to prevent the mental surfacing of connotations that are triggered when encountering words. He felt that only in this way he could cut all ties to his present state of mind, his present conditioning, and could empty himself out completely so as to be open to receive the unconditional truth. This implies that even though he was a rabbi, Abulafia maintained that the ultimate spiritual truth lies beyond the words of the Hebrew Bible, and even beyond every single word that makes sense. By breaking through the confines of religious dogma in particular, and rational thought in general, Abulafia followed what can be called the path of spiritual antinomianism. Although spiritual antinomianism, meaning oppositions to religious and moral law based on religious pretexts, is not a term in wide use, there are many instances of mystics passing the boundaries and contradicting the laws of their own religious traditions. Or, according to the adepts of these transcending streams of spirituality themselves, not passing, but instead following the deeply secret meanings of these spiritual precepts. Now, within Judaism, apart from the practical Kabbalist Abulafia and other Kabbalists like him, there is, for example, also Sabbetai Zwi, who lived from 1625 to 1676. He was known as the mystical Messiah. Now, accepted as such by a great number of Jews all over the world, Zwi, at the height of his mystical vocation, outwardly converted to Islam, while secretly keeping on adhering to his own new Jewish doctrine. The thousands of believers followed his example, creating a sect that remained alive until the last century. Now, one of the main proof texts of this stream of Jewish mysticism was Psalms 119-126, where it's written, "They broke your Torah." The verb in this verse can also mean to declare void, Torah meaning religious instruction and law, and hence the verse was seen as a declaration to break the Torah, to break the law of the Torah. Now, within the fold of Christianity, there are also examples of mystics apparently breaking the law. Meister Eckhart, who lived around 1260 to 1328, for example, stated that true spiritual poverty implies the emptying out of oneself in order to near the truth. Now, Eckhart emphasized that this emptying out also, and importantly, had to include all thoughts about God. Now, in one of his sermons, Eckhart says, "Therefore I pray God that he empties me of God, because my essential being is above God." Now, the philosophies of India abound with theories that seem to be thoroughly non-religious, as far as religion is understood to mean organized dogma and mental slavery. Advaita Shaiva philosophy, for example, holds that the ultimate reality lays beyond all dualism, which in this case means that it lays beyond all rational thought. The subsect of the ascetic Agoris practices a contrariness to all laws and precepts, also aiming to break the hold that rational thought has over the human mind. On their path to the truth, they break all the laws of orthodox Hinduism, drinking alcohol, having contact with corpses on burial ground, and even occasionally eating human flesh. Now, Indian philosophy in general teaches that religious life implies the total surrender of oneself, of the ego, to the truth, so that the truth can reshape one so as to align with it to become a proper receptacle for it. This is directly opposed to the organized religion's stance of strictly following prescriptions that are added to and often jar with one's existing thought system. Whereas the former aims for mental peace and freedom, the latter sows the seeds for mental violence and bondage. Zen Buddhism, as one of the final outcomes of Indian philosophy, would of course be the clearest example of antinomianism, but for the fact that antinomianism is the heart of this spiritual practice. If not for the typical Zen attitude to renounce any confirmation, including that renunciation itself, its antinomianism could be called orthodoxy. According to Zen, the ultimate reality is nothingness. And by this, it does not mean nothingness as opposed to ishnesh, because that would imply a new dichotomy, which itself is contrary to the art of Zen. Zen's nothingness, on the other hand, is to be understood as that which is. Now, to the static intellect, this void is unattainable. It is a state of dynamic being in which there is total oneness. To Zen, all division is held to be merely a result of the rational projections of the mind, which distort the unity of reality. Seen from the point of view of any organized religion, Zen represents ultimate spiritual anarchy. Now, although the religious philosophies described, that I've just described, might sound very alien to the modern Western mind, its trains of thought are part and parcel of the Judeo-Christian world. The convictions of Meister Eckhart, mostly renounced by the Church itself, were based on his own experiences and interpretations of the New Testament. Hence, they can be said to be the fruits of a free thinker. Although Abulafia went as far as denouncing everything that tied him down to intellectualism, most of the Kabbalists based themselves on the originally Hebrew text of the Bible. The convictions of the Jewish mystics thus strictly abided by the words of the Old Testament. In this part of the Christian Bible, we can easily follow the Kabbalists' lead to find the roots of our dormant anarchistic spirituality. To give an example of the Bible pointing at the mystical renunciation of itself, let us look at the end of the creational process as described in the first chapter of Genesis. There, in Genesis 1:31, it is written, "And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good." Now, according to a mainstream, not even mystical interpretation, the last part of the sentence also holds the meaning, "death is good." This interpretation is based on the semantic similarity of the Hebrew words for very and death in Genesis 1:31, and both Jonah 4:9 and Song of Songs 8:6. Other reasons for this interpretation include the use of permutation systems in which the letters of the Hebrew alphabet are interchanged. Now, in this way, the rabbis saw an overlap between the essence of the words for very, me'od, and the word for death, Mavet. And from a mystical point of view, the goodness, justness of death ties in with the nothingness of Zen. Psychological death becomes the gateway to contact with the ultimate reality, and hence is good, with a capital G. Living this goodness is the essence of being that the mystics strive after. Interesting in this context is that the Hebrew word for essence is etzem. The plural word of this word, also meaning bones, can be subdivided into the two words etz and mavet, respectively tree and death. Now the essence of reality thus is likened to a tree of death, and it is from this mystical tree that life, the tree of life, eventually came forth. Now the example of the paragraph I just read to you is one of the vast worlds of intertextuality, is but one in the vast world of intertextuality that forms the framework of Kabbalah. Now while the experiences that can be had in this world are determined by a wide variety of topics and are invariably life-changing, all the Kabbalistic texts dealing with them carry the same warning. One has to come to the text without intentions, expectations, or hopes. In the words of Meister Eckhart, the seeker after the truth has to empty themselves out completely. Now, likening that psychological state to mystical death, one has to die before coming to the holy text. And since to Kabbalists the Torah is the blueprint of creation itself, the same can be said for extra-textual life, life outside of the text. In other words, to come face to face with ultimate reality, one's consciousness has to be of the same essence as that of reality, namely of nothingness. And following Psalms 119, 126, one first and foremost has to declare the Torah, and hence reality, to be void. Having come to that state, one is living life to the fullest, since one is now one with the one. This was the first of the articles I'd like to read to you. In the next post, I will be reading another article from the same compilation, Bat-tesha the Blind, called The Feminine Essence of Creation. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.